the topic of this presumably rather brief presentation tonight is rock and stone open loads. And I'm going to open with images. Perhaps some of you over the years have had a chance to visit a quarry, or as in this case, a gravel pit. And you know how interesting those operations are, whether they're rail served or not. It's kind of funny how many model railroad layouts have coal mines and how few seem to have gravel pits or rock quarries. But rock can be an interesting load, and at the end of showing you relatively few images of rock and stone open loads, I'm going to issue a plea for help and ideas about how to model a particular load, which I'll be showing you right towards the end of the presentation. These particular images are from a collection of Bucyrus Erie Company file photos that I was fortunate enough to obtain. What's interesting about this particular one is how compact it is, almost model railroad size. Not so compact here. Are the images progressing?
Yes.
Good. And in this particular instance, they're actually using the shovel to take the loads up to the track level up above. Those of you who attended the Chicago Northwestern Historical Society meet in Kenosha, Wisconsin in 2010 might remember that we were fortunate enough to tour a very large rock quarry, and people on the tour were complaining that we were on board these very uncomfortable school buses, but I don't think your typical touring coach could have gotten down into the bowels of this quarry. I think only a school bus could, and I'm still kind of surprised that bus got us out. A truck of this size is definitely an off-the-road vehicle. This is not something you would encounter on the streets, but they had a ton of them.
I had a friend who worked at the steel mill at Lone Star Steel Mill in Dangerfield, Texas. And they had a Euclid that size, ran into an Alco S2 or something like that switcher and destroyed it.
I'm not surprised that a truck of this size would be a match for even a pretty heavy locomotive. I mean, it looks like it would take the guy the better part of a morning just to get up into his cab. So this particular quarry, in addition to using those trucks to get the load out of the depths, has a series of conveyors that they use, and some of those conveyors are aimed at that portion of the quarry where there is nearby rail service. If you look at this photo carefully, notice that in the foreground is a very large block of rock. We'll look right above it and notice the size of that truck. That also gives you some notion of how deep this quarry was. This is a quarry that used explosives to loosen the rock. We were hoping that they would have a demonstration of that for us, but they assured us that the mere fact that there were visitors down at the bowels of the quarry meant no, there would be no explosives going on today. And these are just various images showing how the rock and stone business, if you want to call it that, can be integrated into railroad operations, or at least be nearby. This particular structure was right next to the Chicago, North Shore, and Milwaukee Electric Railroad here in Milwaukee, and it was basically a crusher building that would take rock and crush it to the appropriate size and then The railroad presumably was its major customer, and that presumably for ballast or um, sub roadbed. And this is not a real um, uh, view. This is there's a gypsum plant. Actually, there are a few, but this is a gypsum plant in Fort Dodge, Iowa, that has this as a sort of historic display. But the equipment was really used, and apparently looked more or less like this as it would come out of the, I guess you'd call it a mine. Um, in today's day and age, in addition to the rock and stone business, at least here in Wisconsin, and at least maybe 10 years ago, the frac sand business was thriving. And again, if you look at this image very carefully, you'll see a tiny truck there on an elevated road, a slanted road, uh, and a pretty good chunk of that part of central and west central Wisconsin was laid bare by the value of frac sand and the eagerness with which companies were being formed to mine the stuff and send it out. When they were first sending it down to Texas, they didn't have enough covered hoppers, and they were sending it in open gondolas. But by the time I took this picture, they had a huge supply of covered hoppers. The market for frac sand, at least Wisconsin frac sand, has kind of tanked, and so these frac sand covered hoppers are frequently seen in storage down in Illinois on branch lines. But while it lasts, I think there is some frac sand mining going on now, but it's not what it was when I took these pictures. But since my emphasis tonight is on open loads, we're going to be looking at open loads of rock and stone. I said earlier that the frac sand was sent down to Texas in open gondolas. These are hoppers. This may not be sand, but it looks like very fine rock. Uh, uh, and as you can see, they don't want to overload the cars so that the load is basically centered over the trucks, so as not to exceed the capacity of the hopper, because it was probably a hopper built for the weight of coal, and this stuff is much heavier. Ballast is a frequently seen open load on railroads, and these guys on the Union Pacific have uh, electric hoppers, if you will. They have solar collectors on them, and by pushing a button, they can start and stop the outflow of the ballast. Presumably, they're wearing their safety shoes. More ballast. This is in the Canadian Pacific yard in Milwaukee. This is a ballast on a side dump car on the BNSF in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And I was down somewhere in Illinois, perhaps Dalton, seeing Conrail ballast cars. I think these are the kind that can either dump between the rails or to the sides. I think also that these are purpose-built ballast cars. These aren't converted from coal hoppers. Somewhat larger rock, but maybe too small to be called riprap. This might be used for sub roadbed on when they redo a rail line. It's about the size of what people would call talus. This is also on the BNSF in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Now here is true riprap. And at least along the Mississippi River, we see train loads of riprap being readied for the almost inevitable spring floods on the Mississippi River. little close up. And this is a size I would call riprap. That earlier photo where I said it was too small to be riprap, maybe the railroad regarded it as riprap, but this is more commonly the size of what you see. So, the difference between a gravel pit and a quarry is that with a gravel pit, they basically take the stone as they find it. They put it through sieves to separate it by size, but they don't crush it. They don't change the size. At most quarries, they either do the crushing themselves, or they ship out the rock to a crusher, so that the customer, often the railroad itself, could select the size that they need. And this is along the Mississippi. Again, a load of riprap getting ready for they know it's going to flood every year. And there's riprap in this gun, but you can't see it very well. So this is what this is kind of what they're trying to avoid. Let's see if I can. The water has undermined the roadbed, and that's why a timely application of riprap might have prevented this. So the source of a lot of my information about quarries and gravel pits is a chapter in Jeff Wilson's book, Industries Along the Tracks, #4. I think I have all of his Industries Along the Track series. They're all worth getting, even though each chapter you would like to see a full book on it, and he has in fact done that for a few topics. But he has a wonderful collection of photos from the Kalmbach Library and other sources, and the one on quarries is well worth checking out. The particular picture that we see on the cover is a Jim Shaughnessy photo from the bar in Chelsea in Vermont. This might be the Rock of Ages quarry. And I want to call your attention to the stone here. I don't know if you can see my cursor moving, but that's one slab of rock. And notice these parallel lines. I believe that is done with a series of drilled holes, which basically perforates the rock. They might apply very light explosives, not the kind that's going to blow it to pieces, but the kind that will use those perforations to actually separate the rock so that they can ship it in these very large chunks. Now, in the case of this bar in Chelsea railroad, the place where they would do further work on rock of this size was 5 miles away from the quarry. So that's basically all this railroad did. What I want to call your attention to here is this load of what I believe to be limestone. And you'll notice, you can see the center line on the bulkhead of the flat car, that the rock has been sized so that two pieces can fit side by side within the width of the flat car, held in place with stakes in the stake pockets, and being held from the surface of the flat car with what might be 2x6 timbers or dimensional lumber. A side view of the same car. Notice that the rocks have numbers on them. And if you see that little black dot above one rock, that's a flaw in the camera. There was a speck of dirt in it. I think I earlier showed some pictures that I'd taken with that camera on that same trip that had that speck of dirt in every single picture, until I finally opened up the camera by removing the lens and just blowing at it with my lips, and it took care of the problem. Not a scientific approach. The reason
we can get rid of that with Photoshop.
Well, I tried using a photo editing program, and for some reason the dot is so fuzzy. If it had been a solid dot, it would have done something with it, but the dot was so fuzzy that what it was doing with it was weird. So I decided not to go further with it.
Mhm.
So we're looking directly down. You can see again the center line that's drawn in the bulkhead of the flat car. So the reason I'm showing all these pictures is because we are very soon going to be getting to the pictures I actually want to show you, where I need help in figuring out how to model what I'm seeing. I'd only call your attention here. There are three parallel, roughly parallel evidence of the drill that was used to kind of perforate the rock. Earlier today, Ron sent me some pictures of some things he's done to try and capture kind of this look, but that's not what I'm getting at with the problem that I have, which we'll be seeing very soon. And here's the problem. This is a gondola with rock, and I want to call your attention to the one in the center that's sticking up over the edges of the car. Whoops, I think I might have actually gone to, yes. Note the parallel, again, roughly parallel lines, and they're not necessarily super evenly spaced. But what I assume and have been told by at least one person is that these would be um, uh, holes drilled in the rock to kind of perforate it so it can be separated from the chunk next to it. And that's the look that I'm trying to capture. Just these are all just cropped versions of the same photo. The picture that actually generated my curiosity is this one. Those pictures we just saw before were taken in Galesburg, Illinois. This was a shipment of rock coming through Milwaukee, and I believe, in common with that load of limestone that we looked at earlier, is that there are two rocks next to each other on the flat car. Notice it's a very low bulkhead, almost like what you see for shipping wall board or gypsum board. I believe it's two rocks side by side, but take a close look at how odd these are, because here, those perforations are vertical, and at the end of that piece of rock, the perforations are horizontal. The same is true of this piece of rock on the other side of the bulkhead flat car. Vertical perforations, and again, I'm assuming these whitish lines are where the drill mark went through, but a little piece of that rock sticks out beyond the bulkhead, and it is, again, horizontal drill marks. And again, this is a cropped version of the prior photo. I'll expand it a little bit, but it's going to get pretty darn fuzzy. You'll notice that holding it to the flat car are two chains. So this is one solid piece of rock. These aren't a bunch of slabs just being held together with chains, because it wouldn't work. This is one solid piece of rock, but you can see how close together those drill marks are so that they can remove it and get a pretty precisely sized chunk of rock. You can also see on the end that the whitish color from the drill mark kind of disappears here, and that definitely these are not precisely drilled to the same distance. But that's not the point. I guess the point is, how would I capture this look? Because it's pretty clear that it's not just color. It would also be a little bit of texture. But if I could just capture the color, I'd be very happy. By the way, notice also here that a number has been painted onto this chunk of rock. And I assume that that's another chunk of rock next to it there. So that's the question for the group. Here's where we're returning to that chunk that we saw in Galesburg. you can see that the rock kind of rises and falls with each segment that's been set off by those drill marks. And here it looks like a much cleaner and more precise when they remove rock. And you remember that limestone that I showed earlier, they don't always use drills for this. Sometimes they do use various saws. And what does Jeff Wilson have to say about this?
They use on some rocks, they use a rope that's diamond encrusted.
Yes, a diamond wire.
Yeah.
In others, they use a hydraulic splitter, disc saws, and chainsaws. Those are the four methods that Jeff Wilson mentions, but he also mentions this parallel drills. Now, I wonder if this could be from a diamond wire saw and not a drill, but I mean, when they cut it here, it just seems too precise to just drill a hole and expect it to break off in a chunk of exactly that dimension.
Well, if they had cut that with a diamond wire saw, you wouldn't see all those lines.
Yeah,
It'd be smooth. Maybe
I
with
think
striations, but it'd be relatively smooth.
at the risk of making people dizzy, if we go back to these, which I think this is limestone, that looks pretty darn smooth on the top and fairly smooth on the side. The sides are rougher than the top. Whoops, I'm sorry. Getting carried away here.
What material are you using for your rock?
I'll use anything that works.
Okay, so you're looking for suggestions on that too.
Well, you know, I in theory, I suppose I could actually use rock, but I have a feeling I'd be better off doing the same thing that I've done, which is using like Dura rock or whatever it's called over even balsa wood can be a pretty lifelike looking simulation of rock. As I said, here you can definitely see 3 drill marks, but that top to me looks like they might have used a saw or that diamond wire. But what I really want to model are these. And what I'd really like to model is the ones that I see here.
Wisconsin sitting right on the Niagara Escarpment. So there's limestone quarries all over.
Oh,
In
yeah.
fact, Manitowoc's got 3 of them.
This particular load was being brought up north on the Canadian Pacific on the south side of Milwaukee. So we'd be kind of south of all that Niagara Escarpment limestone. This might actually come from Indiana. And I'm not certain that it is limestone because they also do this with granite and with, in some cases, with marble. But I would think mostly granite and limestone. But you're right about, I mean, the whole northeastern quadrant of Wisconsin is gravel pits and rock quarries.
I worked several trains that were primarily limestone. And we got it in all sorts of different versions. In Manitowoc, they had a train every night that was comprised of automobile size rock limestone, and they loaded it on and hoped for the best.
Most, you know, this kind of dimensional stone, slabs or blocks, that's definitely a minority in the shipment of rock and stone by rail. Wilson gives this number. In 2008, there were 2 million tons of dimensional stone sent via rail, but there were 1.6 billion tons of crushed rock sent by rail. So this kind of load is fairly rare. And the irony is that in today's world where people want granite countertops and probably more stone, more large dimensional stone is in demand now than was the case 40 years ago.
A lot of that
Dave,
rock that comes out of here goes for riprap, like along the lake.
Yeah,
And they dump it in there and to kind of hold the shoreline.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, it's entirely possible that when they used the drill and broke a piece away from the quarry wall, and they got it off toward the edge, when it fell down, it rotated 90 degrees. But then it was still way too heavy to move by truck and by rail. So they slightly ran through a bunch of drill bits again to make the piece smaller. You notice these are pretty much all the same size.
Yes, very close in size.
So this piece might have been off the wall, fell down, turned 90 degrees, and then they went ahead and used the drills to make the pieces a little bit smaller to make them easier to handle. Therefore, you wind up with the striations as you see them.
That would certainly explain it, and it would also make sense from a practical standpoint. I don't know how you could exact a piece of stone from a wall of stone drilling in that way. I think it would have to be after you've gotten at least one large chunk loose, and then are trying to make it fit. It also has to fit onto the freight car.
Yeah.
Whether one stone takes up the entire width of the car, which I think might have been the case of those that gondola from Galesburg that I showed earlier, and probably the customer wants wants them to come very close to a certain size.
As far as color
Mhm.
goes, I've tried to match it along, like in my neighborhood. And I found if I do a light wash and a kind of a light yellow beige, and then touch it up with maybe yellow of the same color, but a little darker.
The trying to back up here. Whoops. I wanted to focus on the whoops, Grouchy Dave. So boy, I am overshooting the mark here. When you look at that picture that Jim Shaughnessy took, it's a black and white photo. There's really no color variation where you can see those marks here, which I think are from drills. And you see a few drill marks here, but it sure looks pretty flat. I mean, these look like they weren't haphazard, as you'd think the drill mark would make it look. But the rock that was in, here, when you see this, it looks like it's basically reddish rock with the drill mark creating a slightly paler kind of pink color. It's not bright white.
Might be granite.
I think this is granite. I don't know what rock this would be, but it's kind of a gray and white. And I assume the rock is gray and the white spots are where the drill went through. But I'm still somewhat stymied and I think this might be some color shifting, this reddishness, because you go back, this is this very same photo. Well, it does look kind of red there too, doesn't it? It looks red there and gray here. Well, anyway, and here you can definitely see the indentation. It's almost a corduroy effect from the drills.
Looks like it has a roof vent.
I think that is something I don't think it's a roof vent.
It's it's on the building behind it, I suspect.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I wonder if you could, if you, with some of that neat paint that they've got now, if you could do that with styrene.
Yeah. The thing with styrene is that it's easy to make it regular and more challenging to make it look rough.
Yeah, you'd have to really work it. But you could easily get the drill marks and all that in there.
Well, I appreciate all the suggestions and all the additional information, because I've got to get going on this, because I showed one of these pictures to Dave Leiter, and now he wants me to make this a frugal modeler column in the Midwest Waybill. So now I have a deadline hanging over my head.
Yeah.
So I am not grouchy Dave. So that's my project that's coming up. And fortunately, the weather is encouraging me to be more and more down in the basement anyway. So
Yeah.
thanks for all the thoughts and for watching. And that's what I've got.
Well, I'll get this up as a recording too, and maybe we'll get suggestions. So a lot of people watch this offline.
I can show you what I sent Dave today if you want.
Yeah. See what Ron showed, because in part it gives some ideas about how to do certain kinds of rock loads.
Okay.
But Dave, roughly, how soon do you want all that?
All right. Let's see. Got to figure out how to do this now. View. Wait a
Rich,
minute.
I think my next waybill deadline might be late October, early November. And with Train Fest coming up, November is going to be sort of a lost month for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can get a hold of Fred Ferguson. I'm sure he's got some pictures. And we can combine his and mine, and we'll see what we can come up with.
How about,
I,
how about making some kind of a mold out of like balsa wood box that you would pour into, and on the balsa wood box on the inside, you carve your striations. Something
Yeah.
like that. I'm thinking of casting it because you do want it kind of rough, a little bit uneven here and there. I mean, you don't want everything straight because that's not how that rock looks.
Yeah, it's not
able to-
sliced like cheese. It's a
Right,
rough.
right,
Yeah.
right. I'm just trying to think of something you could carve to make the sides of a box to drop your material into and create a casting.
You know, when I said cheese,
Wisconsin.
when I was looking at my I have some sliced Sargento cheddar
Yeah.
cheese in the refrigerator, and
Oh.
actually from the side view, it actually kind of has that look.
Yeah.
But I don't think an open load on a layout made from real cheese would last very long.
No.
I
Here's
thought
my
maybe,
thoughts on,
some
go ahead,
extruded
Mike.
styrofoam.
Mike's
Styrofoam.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could carve that.
If you use a hot wire with styrofoam, it has a very rock-like look.
I just use an old bread knife.
On this stuff here, I use dental stone. And dental stone carves nicely and you can kind of shave it down. I did some, what do you call it? Like bridge abutments with
Mhm.
the dental stone and carved it with a, like dental picks. And boy, I was really pleased with that.
Ron, how are you doing?
I can't seem to share the screen.
Hmm.
Well, maybe I'll try something else here. I get some unusual things coming up on here. It doesn't seem to want to. I don't think anybody can see this because I can't share.
The soft rock type. Pumice.
I get a screen that says share, but it says the entire screen. I don't know. I don't know that you can help me, Greg, or not.
Yeah, just hit the entire screen and then hit share again, see what happens.
It isn't looking right. Why don't I send it to you, Greg, and then you can show them?
Sure.
Okay, while I'm doing that, I got to get rid of a bunch of stuff here. Send it to you via email.
Hey, Dave,
Yes.
my thoughts on your material. How about doing it the way the quarries did? Pour yourself some plaster in a small baking pan or loaf pan and do a little drilling, and that gives you your natural marks. Just don't use one of the girlfriend's or wife's favorite pans.
Well, I think I have a supply that is immune from criticism on that front, but I do
That's good.
that I do know that years ago I had some bridge abutments made in plaster by Monroe Models. I think they're still in business. And I used a Dremel tool to cut through them.
Greg,
And
you have that pretty quick.
plaster kills a Dremel tool disc really quickly. And I would imagine it does the same with a drill bit.
You can always put it in a pie pan and beat the snot out of it with a hammer.
Well, but you know, you want a certain amount of precision to the final look. That's
You
the
do?
that's the real challenge.
Well, now that you showed me what you're going to do, I'm going to try to make you one tomorrow and see how it works. I know one thing, that the first one I make will be too heavy because I'm going to make it out of solid plaster, and that would not be a something you'd want because your car would end up weighing about 10 pounds.
Well, but you know, remember how short those bulkheads were. I mean, those weren't monstrous size. I mean, they were big.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want them landing on your foot, but I don't know if they would make a car too heavy.
Greg, have you got the email yet?
Yeah, I've got it. It's downloading.
Okay.
There we go.
There used to be wasn't there a molding clay that you could put in the oven that kids played with years ago?
I think there is.
I could say.
All right, this is what I sent him. Well, I didn't send him this, but this is what I made up. I like to use Durabond 90 as my plaster. I think it's first of all, it's cheaper than Hydrocal, and it's just the same stuff. You remember you talked about the guy that showed us that plaster board that car up there when we went to the plant. And he told us, he said, yeah, I just scraped that stuff off the floor and I take it down to the hobby shop in Des Moines. He sells it for Hydrocal. From that point on, I never bought Hydrocal again. And that, Durabond, the 90, if you don't know anything about this, Durabond comes in all different numbers. If it's Durabond 20, it sets up in 20 minutes. And if it's Durabond 90, it sets up in 90 minutes. You can buy it in 5-pound sacks.
Yep.
I really like it. It gets hard, man. And somebody told me here a year ago, maybe the way to soften it up is use vinegar. And so I'm taking some out right now. I'm sure glad somebody told me that hint because it does work.
That's true. I've done that.
Okay, you could change the next screen. That's what I use. I use a cut-off nail rather than a bit. And I have no problem cutting through plaster with that.
Hmm.
I use a hacksaw blade to cut plaster like that.
The next one. And there's my first test. And then the next one.
Hmm.
All right.
That's where I broke it off. Now remember, this is wet stuff. We were talking about it, and at noon I cast that, or I made that block. So if by tomorrow that's going to be really hard, and it'll look different when I drill it. So that's the there's one more picture, but it just shows a little different. I think if I would I could actually put marks on there to make the ruler right. And it's at least 2 sides, but maybe it's on all 4 sides.
Worth a try, Dave.
Yep. Well, keep reading the Midwest Region Waybill. If I succeed, it'll be in there, and if I don't, Dave Leiter will just have to find something else to print.
Well, it's a challenge.
Very good. Well, thank you, David. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And, appreciate the discussion. I'm sure you'll credit us if you're able to use any of the, especially in the Midwest Waybill. I mean, that's our hometown paper.
Well, there's a lot of prestige being credited in the Midwest
Oh yeah,
Waybill. Yeah.
That's what I live for. That and the feedback I get from YouTube. But anyway, yeah. So thanks very much. We are on for next week. We don't have a presenter yet, so if you're interested in presenting, let me know. And then we're going to take. I'm trying to remember exactly when in October. Yeah, so the Naperville RPM is on the 16th or the 17th and 18th, so we'll be off on the 16th. But outside of that, we should be good. So that means the next 2 weeks we need presenters for the 9th and the 2nd. So thank you all for joining. Have a great Thursday, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank-
Good night.
All
Thanks,
right.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
night, gents.
Good
And
night.
thanks, Ron.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Yeah.